You are listening to NSR, National Scrubs Radio, where nurses, doctors, students, and other healthcare professionals bring you stories from scrubs across the nation. Tune in today with NSR's Derek J.
This is NSR, National Scrubs Radio. My name is Derek J. I'm your host. Today's guest, her name is Olga. She's Polish. She speaks Polish too. Olga has a very interesting story about her time working in Baltimore as a nurse. So before we started recording, Olga was like, I have some homework for you. I'm like, homework? She goes, yeah, you have to watch the 12 O'Clock Boys documentary. So I did. So just briefly, the documentary is about young men in Baltimore who are part of this motorcycle group that kind of take the streets over a little bit. It's a way of distraction from, what's going on in their own community. And some of these, it's a dangerous lifestyle. So sometimes they end up in the hospital. So Olga talks about, sometimes seeing people in this community come in the hospital. She talks about the TRU, an acronym I'd never heard before. Plus, she goes over her time about working next to security ninjas. You will have to tune in to find out what she's talking about. Also her advice about the blue light district. And she was there during the Baltimore riots. We briefly touch on the subject of travel nursing, but you really don't want to miss Olga's story. And here's Olga. Welcome to the show, Olga. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, Derek?
I'm doing awesome. I'm really happy that our schedules finally aligned to make this happen. We've been talking about it for a while.
Took a couple weeks, but we're here.
Finally, yes. So you were not originally from the States.
No, I was born in Poland.
Poland. So do you still speak the language?
I do.
Do you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? Yeah?
Dzień dobry.
What does that mean?
Hello.
It
literally translates.
I can say hola. I mean, is that like, it doesn't mean I speak Spanish. Do you really speak like a lot of Polish?
I really speak Polish fluently. Dzień dobry means good day. It literally translates to.
So how would you say like hematoma?
Wouldn't qualify for a medical interpreter, but my Polish patients and we get along just fine.
No, we'll see.
We get by.
Who needs a translation line when you have Olga in the room, right?
That's right.
But I don't think I've ever had a patient that was speaking Polish.
I had one.
One in your whole career, so far?
Yeah, I think so. We get a lot of Russian patients. I can understand them somewhat, but I don't speak Russian. So
now, was this in San Francisco or from Baltimore, where you originally from?
San Francisco. There's not many Polish or Russian patients in Baltimore.
Okay. So, like, how would you say Baltimore is different compared to San Francisco?
You mean Baltimore?
Baltimore? Is that how you say it?
That's how you
say it. Really? Is it?
If you're from Baltimore, that's how you say Baltimore.
It almost sounds like Southern. Like, you're just mumbling words. Yeah.
So I gave Derek some homework last night. I told him to watch the documentary 12 O'Clock Boys. And one of the main things when I watched it that stands out to me is the good old Baltimore accent. I love how they had captions.
Right. Yeah, because it was very mumbled a lot of times. Yeah.
That's the Baltimore accent.
Wow. Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
It takes me a lot of self-control not to say Baltimore.
Now, you were a nurse in Baltimore, correct?
I was, yes.
So how would you describe I don't know how long you were there for, but how would you describe nursing over there?
Oh, I have a love-hate relationship with Baltimore.
Ooh.
I think it is a beautiful place. I love the people there. I think the culture is very similar to San Francisco, where it's very artsy and people are pretty open-minded.
Okay.
I just think that it's a poorly run city, and working in downtown Baltimore really opened up my eyes to that. So we can talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, would you feel like it's kind of a little bit from healthcare, but you feel like the government there has kind of failed the city or the people that live there?
Yeah. So let's rewind for a minute.
Sure.
I worked in downtown Baltimore in a trauma center there, one of the best in the world, and I loved it. I had the opportunity to work there through a scholarship program, and I had a clinical there. I originally thought I wanted to do pediatrics. That's what I went to nursing school for. I was going to do pediatrics, and it was going to be great. I got to my adult health clinical, and it was on the adult trauma step-down unit.
Okay.
It was called an IMC, like an intermediate care unit.
Okay.
But it was really like every other community hospital's ICU. And I was just obsessed there. I couldn't get enough.
Right.
So as a student, we were able to go to the operating rooms. We were able to go to their admitting unit, which was called the TRU.
Okay.
So it's called the Trauma Resuscitation Unit. And so the only way you could come in there was via helicopter or ambulance or transfer. You couldn't walk in like you would to the ED. So the patients that were coming in were already triaged and were already very sick.
Or were they like gunshot wounds, that kind of trauma, or
all sorts of trauma?
Okay.
Unfortunately, it's sad, but yes, gunshot wounds are one of our main.
Well, I hear Baltimore has a huge high murder rate. Right?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. It's super sad.
Yeah.
So yeah, a ton of gunshot wounds. That wasn't the regular stabbings, car accidents, bike accidents,
the usual
freak accidents,
right.
Just all sorts of traumas. We also had like a lot of the elder population who had fallen and broken a hip, and we had like a really strong soft tissue focus as well.
Oh, okay. Like soft tissue injuries.
Yeah. So like necrotizing fasciitis. We also had a hyperbaric chamber there where we could, if somebody had like carbon dioxide inhalation
okay,
or monoxide, they could take a dive in the hyperbaric chamber.
I've never seen that before in the hospital.
It was awesome. So as a student, there was just an unlimited amount of things to learn.
So after this exposure, you were just kind of like, screw kids. Like, I don't care about them. I don't want to do peds.
I just love to learn. And so going somewhere like this where I could go to clinical and I could literally watch, the doctor would let me listen after they put a chest tube in, or they would crack somebody's chest open at bedside. And
right.
It was just so unreal. And
so that adrenaline rush just got you going. Yeah.
There was no feeling like it.
Right.
I was obsessed.
Right. So like that's when you learned that pediatrics wasn't for you.
I still love peds. I think maybe one day when I'm ready to do something else or I need some more clinical stimulation,
right.
I think that I would definitely transition to peds, but I enjoy both. I like adults just as much as I do kids, which I think is rare. You don't meet many nurses that like both.
No, that is very rare because I feel like, a lot of healthcare workers, but like with pediatrics, that's just like, it's almost like a black or white issue. It's just more like binary. Like, no, I'm not going to do it. I just can't.
Yeah, you have adult nurses that are like, nope, I can never do peds. And then you have peds nurses that are like, oh God, no, I can never do adults.
Right.
But I worked in the PICU as a student nurse for over a year and a half, about that. And I loved it.
See, the issue I have with pediatrics is, it's not really an issue, it's just my issue. I used to date a pediatrician, resident, and she was saying that a lot of times when the kids come in, it's not their fault, it's the parents' fault. And that's the issue that was really hard for her to cope with. And, how do you detach yourself from the family that's involved?
Oh, that's 100%. I would agree with that. And that's what I needed a little break from kids as well when I made the decision, was because I found myself getting very protective of the kids, especially in Baltimore. Unfortunately, you'd have a mom who did cocaine throughout her whole pregnancy.
That's tough. Yeah.
Had the baby. And then you have this poor little baby that's going through withdrawal and the mom is nowhere to be found.
Right.
And then it takes us months to get this baby stable and baby goes home with mom. So that was really tough, not being protective. And just like you see a little puppy, you're like, let me take it home. I want to protect it.
And it's hard to detach yourself and not get involved. Right.
Yeah. And that's part of what I liked about trauma is I went into it in a very naive, I was 22 when I started,
That's young.
I think.
Yeah.
I knew what I wanted to do pretty early on. And I went into it knowing that I was going to be taking care of gang members, knowing it was going to be emotionally tough, knowing it was going to be sad. And that was okay. I was prepared for that. And I knew a lot of the people I was taking care of made bad decisions.
Right.
That the injuries that they had were the consequences of their actions. And so that was a lot easier for me to justify than this poor little baby who came here
right.
withdrawing, and it was not his fault at all.
That's the hardest part I would have to deal with. Like I don't think I could deal with that. Like
it's tough. I give credit to peds nurses.
I do. Yeah. Your peds, the peds nurses out there. I don't know how you do it, but props to you. So
thanks for all you do.
So how long did you do nursing in Baltimore for? Like what was the catalyst that kind of made you decide to get out there?
So I went to nursing school in downtown Baltimore.
Okay.
It's So that was 2 years. And for a year of that, I worked in the hospital in my clinicals. And then I actually got a job on the same unit that I had my clinicals on. So I was pretty lucky to do my adult health clinical, my senior practicum, like your 180 hours before you graduate on this unit, and then take a full-time position.
Right.
And I worked full-time there for almost 2 years.
And you kind of got like your feet wet a little bit. You kind of get
the experience I've had there made me the nurse I am now.
Right.
I got to learn so many skills hands-on and see conditions that a lot of nurses haven't seen in their whole career. So I am so grateful for that.
Now, you were saying before we started recording that there was a TV show that was being recorded where you were working at?
Yeah, so there was a network that started filming like a reality TV drama.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? The Untold Stories of the ER, something like that.
Right.
They started filming in our trauma center, and we got all these notices that, by the way, you're going to be seeing film crews, so on, so on, so on. I think they did a couple of episodes, and then I don't even know if they aired because apparently there wasn't enough drama.
Not enough drama in a trauma center, or was it a trauma?
Well, clinical drama, yes, but reality TV shows I think went more like screaming, yelling, running, and it was more of an organized dance. I mean, it was chaos, and from a clinical perspective, when you know how sick the patient is, it's a medical emergency. You're on an adrenaline high, you're moving, but you know how it is. Not everyone's always running around like crazy.
It's not Grey's Anatomy, you know.
Exactly. That's, I think, what they were going for. So
that's amazing that they couldn't find enough, like, you know, drama or maybe chaos that would cause like ratings. Whenever you have people
I thought that was quite interesting too.
Yeah, it just blows my mind.
I mean, working there was like living in one of those TV shows. So.
Right.
To me, there was plenty of drama.
Right. So. You're in your own reality TV show practically at work.
Yeah. So I was surprised. I was looking forward to watching it.
Yeah. So now you worked in was it the trauma unit or? So
the way the hospital worked is you came in through the TRU and you had to be a critical care nurse with 5 years of experience to work down there.
Got it. Okay.
And usually ICU experience. And then the way it was set up is you had 5 floors, I think it was 5 or 6. I don't remember. And so, oh gosh, my memory is so off today.
It's all right.
And so each floor, like the 4th floor was neurotrauma, and then the 5th floor was multi-trauma. And each unit was broken up into like an IMC, which was a step down, and then like the ICU, which was like the sickest of the sick patients from like the Maryland, DC, Delaware, Virginia area.
Right.
Fun fact, Maryland's the only state that will pay for you to be helicoptered in.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Like taxpayer money pays for you?
They have state-run
rescue.
helicopters that have a state trooper and a paramedic on board, or the paramedics are dual trained as state troopers. So if they land on a scene, the one can get out to help the whoever is the patient, and then the other one can actually chase the perpetrator if they need to, because they're both state troopers.
That's amazing.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
But like, is it because of what happens if it's like their fault though? I don't know. That's like, to me, that's like really tough. Like, for instance, in Phoenix, you have a Camelback Mountain, and every year there's someone that tries to climb that mountain, and they have to airlift them all the time, and it's a big bill. You know what I mean? Like, do you pay for that? You know,
I think that the sad part is that in Baltimore, it's usually not. That's not the case.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, I don't know.
And I don't think a lot of the population can probably afford that big bill anyway.
I know it is. Sometimes it gets astronomical with the cost of healthcare, but so you went from Baltimore. So what was your last stint at the Baltimore hospital? Like, how did you transfer over to the West Coast?
So I probably would still be in that same hospital if it wasn't for my boyfriend's job, because I loved it there. But my boyfriend had finished his master's and he was looking for a full-time position. And we always knew we wanted to move and travel and explore. Right. There's so much more than just this little bubble you grew up in. And so he took a job with a company, which is a New Zealand-based company. Mm-hmm. That's where their first offices started. And then he was recruited for the San Francisco office, the first U.S. office.
Got it. So did you do travel nursing when you came across?
Well, we moved straight from Baltimore to New Zealand.
Oh, wow. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, so originally it was only supposed to be 3 months, and it didn't make any sense to get a nursing license just for 3 months.
Right.
And then it turned into 6. And I was like, well, probably could have gotten a license for 6 months. But
yeah, but you're in New Zealand.
Exactly. I was a professional vacationer.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. I would do it again 1,000 times over.
Yeah. So, but then when you came back to California, did you do travel nursing, or were you able to get a job?
I did, because I had like my standards were set high. I had a great manager. I had the place where I came from was a Priority 1 hospital,
Right.
clinically interesting. Their policies were really great. I had great coworkers. And so I was looking for something similar. I wanted a big university setting. I wanted a good manager. I wanted good coworkers. And I wanted to learn. And so I did travel nursing. My use of travel nursing was a little bit different in the sense that I wanted to try out different units before committing to a full-time position.
Which is smart. It's kind of like pediatrics. You would originally gone into pediatrics, but you realize this other stuff, hey, this is okay too. This is what I want to do, in a sense. So when you did the travel nursing, how would you compare that from being staff back in Baltimore?
It was so different. I don't think I anticipated how different it was going to be. I just thought it was going to be like a 3-month trial run.
Right.
But you're not really considered as a member. You are, but you're not as a member of like the team, just because travelers come so often, come and go. And you float so much. So you get to go all over the hospital, all over different units, which is great because I feel like I learned so much by doing that. And my skills as a nurse were sharpened. I knew a little bit about neuro, but working on a specific neuro floor, I really had to utilize those skills. So it was awesome having that opportunity. But at the same time, you don't really get to meet your coworkers very well or get to know them or know who you can rely on or who you can ask for help because you're on a different floor every day.
It's
so
survival.
You're meeting,
it is survival.
You're just meeting hundreds of nurses versus a handful of or 20 or 30 that you can work with all the time.
Right. And then it's hard to make those like lasting connections because if you're floated so much, it's like you might see the same people maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 times the assignment and that's it. You know
that's
what I mean?
right.
And that's all you have to rely on.
Yeah.
And I think there's another thing too is with nurses or in healthcare. I've had friends in the military say this, like sometimes people, they want to make sure that you can survive first before they connect with you. Like, let me see, if you can work here, then I'll maybe be your friend. But it takes time to do that. Yeah.
You either sink or swim.
That's it. But
you learn how to be self-sufficient and you learn to trust your own judgment. And I've definitely had experiences where I needed to really trust my gut. And I don't know you, but I need to go with what my gut is as a nurse and kind of learn to speak up and step up.
Right.
So I think it definitely made me a better nurse doing so. I have no regrets. I enjoyed traveling.
I think being assertive is the number one tool of being a travel nurse. You have to be assertive in a lot of ways.
Even being a nurse.
Yeah, well, it's true. But like meeting different, different personalities and everything else. But not just being assertive, but also not stepping on toes.
Yeah.
It's a fine balance.
It is.
Yeah.
I always looked at myself as a guest on the unit that I was working on.
You don't want to burn any of the bridges, that's for sure.
Nope.
No.
And everyone does things differently. So that's another thing that was an eye-opener to me. We all learn similar curriculums and we all take the same tests, but sometimes everyone has different ways of doing even simple things like drawing up medicines or giving an injection. People
on different units too, in the same hospital. Yeah.
Exactly. People like different syringes, different needles, different
equipment, different tools.
It's so much.
Different protocols too, and then it's like, well, we do it this way here, and it's like, well,
okay,
all right, we'll do it that way.
I'll do it your way, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was one of the hardest things for me, especially going from hospital to hospital, because sometimes, even the policies were, I want to say outdated, but done completely different.
Couldn't agree with you anymore.
Yeah. So now, did you just travel to one hospital, or did you go to multiple hospitals?
Nope, I refused. Well, I got a couple of job offers as a traveler and I kept declining them because I kind of knew where I wanted to work. Okay. And my boyfriend would laugh at me. He told me that I'm being very, very picky for somebody who's unemployed. Because at that point I was unemployed for almost 6 months. It was like 5.5. I've blown through all my savings being a professional vacationer in New Zealand. Wow. And now it's time to find a job and I kept declining jobs. But I got the job I wanted, and I'm more than happy with it. I did my research.
You knew what you wanted to do.
That's right.
Yeah, that's great, especially if you're dedicated that much to be, a bum. Like to lose all your money. Like, this is what I want.
But if you're going to be a bum anywhere, New Zealand is the place to be a bum.
Well, I give your boyfriend a lot of credit.
Yeah, he was very patient with me. He's a good guy.
Yeah, he sounds like a good guy. So without giving like, I don't know, too much information, do you have any like patient stories that really stuck out in Baltimore?
Oh my goodness, too many. So many. I remember the one that sticks out mostly. I had this big, tall, burly African American guy, grills, had tattoos, and looked super mean. I remember me being 5 foot something, blonde, little white girl from the suburbs and from the country in Poland. I remember going in and thinking like, this guy's just gonna like chew me up. Like he is not gonna be having it. And I was very intimidated of him. And so I went in, I introduced myself, and he was so sweet. He was the nicest guy ever, but super anxious. And I just thought that was so ironic given how massive he was and his presence was so aggressive.
Teddy bear.
Big teddy bear.
Huge teddy bear. And
I didn't know why he was so anxious. And throughout the next couple of weeks, I got to know him. And it turns out that great guy, family guy.
Yeah.
He has multiple kids, and with the love of his life, his high school sweetheart.
Right.
They went to a birthday party, and he said he didn't even want to go. He just wanted to go home. But his girlfriend wanted to go to this birthday party, and some idiot, his words, came and just started shooting for no reason.
Just started shooting.
Shooting. And he shot him in the butt.
It's not funny, but like.
No, and he has tubes coming out of every orifice, and I'll just let you imagine. And
he's fortunate it hit him in the butt cheek instead of anywhere else.
Well, it went through a lot of anatomical.
Oh, I gotcha. No, he wasn't that lucky.
No, and that's when I realized if I had tubes sutured in those areas, I'd probably be very anxious. You just changed the whole
story right there, by the way. After you told me that part, I'm like, oh man, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, I'm like, gosh, like here I was coming from this perspective that a lot of the patients I was taking care of were the Bloods and the Crips, and they were dealing drugs and playing with guns, and a lot of these things were the consequences of their actions. And then I get this guy who did nothing. He just went to a birthday party. We all go to birthday parties. Right. I mean, that could have happened to anyone, but it just sucks that he lives in a world where you have to be worried about going to a birthday party.
So that's literally you have to be thinking about what's behind your shoulder.
Yeah.
I mean,
at all times.
That's super scary. So how did you, like with all the gang members and stuff, how did you deal with their actions that led them into the hospital? Like, was it hard for you?
Sometimes it was hard. Sometimes, I mean, with the gang members, I anticipated that and I was mentally prepared for that. Okay. So I kind of had a wall up, and that didn't shock me as much when they told me their stories. I usually would ask people, what did you do to get shot, or what did you do to get stabbed? And their stories were ridiculous. Some funny, some sad. I remember, and I was always so scared that I was very picky with who I asked. I asked like the low level guys, like the guys which I knew did like silly things. I never asked the high level guys. I never wanted to be called into court. I never wanted anyone coming after me because I knew something I wasn't supposed to know. And the one guy I had is telling me a story. He was driving drunk and flipped his car. And he's telling me, and he's like, I was driving 80 miles an hour down a one-way road. It was really stupid. I'm like, yeah, uh-huh.
Yeah.
He's like, and then the road ended. I'm like, uh-huh.
Right.
He's like, and then my car flipped and I killed. And I remember when he said I killed, I put my fingers over my ears and went, la, 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 la. Like, don't tell me. Don't tell me. And he interrupted me. He's like, no. I killed 3 cows. I was like, oh my God, thank God. They were just cows. I did not want to. I was like, this guy is not going to confess to a murder to me right now.
Yeah. Because then what do you do then?
Yeah,
I've never been in that situation. Yeah.
Exactly. I did not want to hear it.
Right.
I did not see it going in that direction. Otherwise, I would have never asked.
Right.
But so, yeah, I was always worried somebody was going to tell me something I shouldn't know. So normally I didn't ask, especially if they were like high level.
Right.
But if they were like the low level guys, I would ask just for fun.
You gave me some homework.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I watched the, was it 12 O'Clock Boys documentary? Yeah. It was really good. I mean, it kind of gave you a little insight. I mean, I do not want to paint Baltimore, right? Or however you say it.
Baltimore.
Yeah. As a broad stroke of that documentary, of course. But it did give an insight to a little kid. I think his name was Pug, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was Pug.
Yeah, it was Pug, right? And it just shows you that when some of these people come into the hospital, that it's more than just their actions. It's a community. and that would be like, it would be easy to judge someone if you're just at bedside, but you don't know the full story.
And that's one reason I asked, what gang are you affiliated with, or where did this happen? Because it kind of gave me an idea of their background, what gang members they were affiliated with, what ones they weren't. We had to make sure that we didn't put two opposing gang members on the same floor.
Shared room.
Yeah. So it kind of gave me an idea of when they're discharged, what they're going back to and what challenges they face and kind of what to prepare them for. We did a lot of crisis intervention while they were in the hospital.
So any other stories that really stuck out to you in Baltimore besides the butt cheek?
Oh, there was
gunshot?
So many. There were so many. I'm almost scared to go in that. I remember there was, I remember one time in the resuscitation, we had a guy come in and he was wearing jeans and he was stabbed like 6 or 7 times. And I remember everyone was kind of, wow, do you know how much energy it takes to stab somebody that many times? Like, they had to be pretty passionate. Yeah, you got to be dedicated. One time is exhausting. They cut off this guy's jeans and he's wearing like butterfly pajamas, and everybody turns around and like keep going. Cut off the butterfly pajamas. He's wearing fishnet stockings, and everyone's like,
what?
Okay, keep going.
Right, yeah.
And cut off fishnet stockings, and we get him stable. And then I just remember like the energy was so tense because this guy was like on the edges of life. And one of the residents goes, "So about those butterfly pajamas?" And the whole room bursts out laughing. And it's just, there's things that you question, and then there's things you were scared to question. But yeah, you had asked about like coping with if it was difficult to take care of some of these people. I remember there was a case where we had a drunk driver who had killed 2 young teenage kids after prom.
Oh, man.
And she was on like one of the floors, and then the kids that she killed were on the floor above her, like brain dead, getting ready to donate organs.
Did you work both units, or you just knew that this is going on?
I think I was charged or something, so I knew what was going on. Yeah. And she's like on the unit talking about being really unpleasant and nasty about her pinky hurts or something, and no remorse for these 2 kids. And so taking care of somebody like that, where you're like, wow, life is so unfair. How does this even happen?
Yeah. Like, how did you deal with that? Because I'm sure, like you said, you're very young in Baltimore.
Yeah.
So how did you deal with that?
Yeah, there were some days that I would just think about it on my whole way home, on the way to work, and just some things you couldn't ever rationalize, and you never will be able to. And there's just, shit happens.
That's very true. Because
sometimes it just happens.
Because if you try to rationalize everything that we see, all healthcare workers, not just nurses, doctors, everyone that's part of the team, you will drive yourself crazy.
I'd never been a fearful person. I thought I was always I didn't have any fears. I would go skydiving. I could go bungee jumping. Nothing would have I would never think of the worst case scenario. But after working in trauma, oh my gosh, I can't walk outside without thinking, don't drive with a full bladder.
Right.
There's just things you learn. Always wear your seatbelt.
Do you still go to birthday parties?
I have to pick and choose wisely.
Or wear a lot of extra padding or something, right?
I left Baltimore feeling very cynical. I just felt, just because I saw sometimes the worst parts of society day in, day out, that I didn't feel like, it felt like it was a lost cause. So it was,
That's tough, right? I mean, when you get to that point.
It sounds really awful, doesn't it?
It can, but I mean, it's the reality.
It was such when all you see is such a saturation of negativity. It was hard. And around the time I was leaving Baltimore was Baltimore riots. Have you heard of those?
Yeah,
remember that?
Yeah, you were there.
Yeah, I worked that day. And
wow. Please.
It was only a couple blocks away from the hospital. And this was at the point I've been there for almost 2 years. Like I said, I loved my coworkers. I loved what I did, but the patient population was becoming so challenging. Like I said, I found myself being I couldn't just justify it anymore. I couldn't rationalize it.
Right.
And we can get to this. I just started seeing the more systematic issue, that it's not any particular patient or any particular person. It's the fact that this population is set up to fail.
Right.
And that we can fix them as much as we want, but then we send them back into this environment, and then they're going to come back again.
You were just talking about being in that environment in the hospital, working, that it was hard for you to cope. You know what I mean?
Can't imagine
you get burnt
what
out.
these people went back to.
Burnout, but you just kind of get cynical and everything else. imagine their lives.
Absolutely.
Like, I mean, if they're always around that kind of community and
it
that
was
chaos.
a complete shift of perspective. I mean, my perspective have changed 180 degrees. It just was, I didn't expect that. And so seeing the Baltimore riots, I didn't agree with it. I thought that it was heartbreaking. And the people I was working with that lived in those communities were heartbroken. I mean, these were a lot of people that came from out of town, was my understanding.
Right.
That participated in the riots. But
the media involved and everything else. It can be a little different. Right.
Yeah. But I started understanding where the community was coming from. It was just, they were at their wits' end. They had no more resources. And so by the end of the night, like they caught the city on fire. It was insane. It was like something out of a movie. But I was working that day. It was my third shift my third 12-hour shift. I was charged. I think I was charged. I don't remember if I had patients or not. And I was exhausted, but it was a couple blocks away from the hospital and it was getting really bad. So it started out with just young kids throwing rocks at the police. And then it started by vandalizing, and then things were kind of escalating. And so I wanted to get out of there before it got even worse. But then I also volunteered to stay just in case new nurses couldn't come in. And the hospital was at this point where they didn't really know what to expect. Was it going to get worse? Was it going to die down? They had called in the National Guard.
Right.
So we have these soldiers with these huge guns standing in front of the hospital, guarding the hospital. But it wasn't officially on lockdown. And it seemed like all my team was able to get in. And so I was like, bye, peace, I'm out.
Right.
Goodbye, I'm getting out of here before this gets any worse.
Yeah.
And I just remember leaving, and it was kind of like you're leaving at your own risk. Like, you understand this is all going on outside. And I remember the soldier with, I guess it was like an AK-47. It's like, good luck. I was like, oh my God. I was like, you better have my back.
He's the one that's telling you good luck. Yeah.
I was like, you better have a good eye and a good shot.
Right. I didn't realize it was that, I didn't realize it was that bad.
I remember watching it once I got home. We just turned on the news and you just saw like this. I know this sounds over exaggerated, but the city burned. They just caught a ton of like warehouses on fire. And then the community started like lashing out even against firefighters who were there just to put the fires out.
Right.
So it was sad. It was a sad day in Baltimore.
Wow. So was this near the end of your nursing stint in Baltimore?
That was probably the day where I decided that I need a change of scenery and a change of pace.
Wow. And that's when you decided to go to New Zealand?
Yep. Completely different. It was like yin and yang.
So that 6 months was probably much needed. You being a bum in New Zealand, spending all your savings,
Yes.
Everything else. So
it was about a good 3 months where I didn't really feel like having much human interaction.
Well, I think that's very important. I feel like if you're always dealing with trauma, if you're always dealing with these high intense situations, you can't just continuously as a career, I say for 20, 30 years, just continuously be in it. If you do, I don't know how you do it. You know what I mean? But to keep yourself sane, you need that. Like,
you need
release.
to TLC yourself a lot.
Yeah.
And your mental health. And I think then that was the biggest thing. I was young and I didn't realize how much your mental health played in it. And so I don't think I took enough time to, you know how they, after like a patient dies, for example, we'll have like debriefings. I don't think I had any debriefings while I was there. And I think that would have been, and not anything against the hospital. It's just, I think that I would have benefited from that. And it was hard because who are you going to debrief to? It's funny. Unless it's another nurse.
It's funny that you say that because like I've been through some really traumatic like experiences with patient deaths at the hospital. Yeah. I've never even heard of debriefing until I talked to other nurses. They didn't offer it, or at least I wasn't aware of it.
I think it's becoming more of a thing, and I think that's awesome.
It should be.
Needs to be a thing.
There needs to be some type of support system for healthcare workers that are involved in that kind of environment. I mean, it can really tear you down.
Even a week from when it happens or so, I think it should just be like an open room type of thing. You can come and debrief. Because you don't want to be on the gossip end and go around and talking about, obviously, HIPAA. You don't want to talk about your patients.
Right.
And especially to people who it's not relevant to their care, but just like an open area where you can go and decompress. If it's a friend
New
or
Zealand.
if it's, New Zealand is it.
That's it.
That's for sure. A lot of sunshine, beaches, sheep.
Sheep,
a lot of sheep. What is it? 4 million people and 40 million sheep? Something like that.
I did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
So you got all these fun facts.
Mm-hmm. I know that I came prepared.
Yeah. That's awesome. So can we go back to the 12 o'clock boys documentary real quick?
Yeah. Do you like that one?
I did. How did you find that documentary to be relevant to your, time in Baltimore?
So I've taken care of a patient, one that comes to mind. I'm sure there was many. And I was fascinated with this gang. So for anyone that doesn't know what the 12 o'clock boys are, there's a documentary you can watch about it. But it's a gang in Baltimore, and it's usually young kids. And I think they range from like 14 years up. I don't think many of them are much older than like 23, 24, 25.
Mm-hmm.
And they steal dirt bikes and they ride them in the city, like on the city streets. They will.
It was insane. When I saw it, I was like, is this really happening?
Yeah. They will. I mean, there's people that are late to work because the 12 o'clock boys
they
cause car accidents. Yeah. They'll block the roads.
Right.
I think somebody in the documentary talked about like 12 o'clock boys circling their car. It's pretty intense if you're there and you
really
see
intense.
that.
Yeah.
So, but these are young. And so they talk about it being called the 12 o'clock boys because they ride the dirt bikes at such an angle that it's supposed to be at 12 o'clock.
Got it.
The dangerous part, though, from a nursing and a trauma perspective, is they don't wear any protective gear.
I didn't see one helmet.
No.
Maybe just one in that whole documentary.
Yeah, there was just one. You're right. I thought that too. I was like, oh my God, where did they get a helmet from?
That was my thought. I was like, man, only one helmet.
Yeah, but so it's a huge problem in Baltimore. I mean, they're harassing regular citizens. People are scared of them. And then another angle is that a ton of these boys get hurt. And these are boys. I mean, these are kids.
Yeah.
How many stupid things have we done when we were 14 or 15 or 16?
I've done a lot of stupid things when I was a kid.
And so these kids don't fully understand. They don't have any support system. They don't have any role models. And so the way the documentary kind of goes out, this young kid, Pug, is aspiring to be one of these 12 o'clock boys. And he's looking up to them and idolizing them. But a lot of these kids, they'll do their wheelies and then they'll fall off their bike and smack their head against the pavement. So in like the neuro ICU, I've taken care of some of these kids, and it's so sad when they just look like a vegetable, or like the kid just looks like a baby, like he's regressed and can't speak anymore, can't communicate his needs. And it's so sad because he's a young kid, and I just look back and I had a sister that was that age, and I'm like, God, like any kid could do something stupid. It just happens that it's happening at a more alarming rate with these kids.
Right.
And so, and then you have the family that's like, are they going to get better? Why can't we fix him? And they just they can't comprehend why. And as a provider, you're like, well, why didn't anybody stop that? Why didn't somebody like get him out of this gang?
Right.
It's not that simple. So it was that's kind of the struggles that I didn't anticipate with working there.
Right.
That started bothering me. Like, why couldn't we have prevented this from happening versus
like
waiting till it happened?
You just want to jump in and fix it, right?
Yeah.
But then when you look at the whole thing, it's like, where do I even start?
Exactly. So the city was talking about building like a dirt bike park in the city for these kids.
Right.
But I don't even know if that would fix it. I don't know if that would contain them to the dirt bike park. And it doesn't fix the problem of theft. I mean, they're still stealing these dirt bikes.
Right.
So, but at least maybe it would keep them a little safer.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know.
that seems a little scary though. I mean, like,
yeah.
Like I think the challenge for me, I think for a lot of nurses or is knowing that it's a bigger issue than the patient, especially with the young kids.
Yeah.
Because I didn't see, like, their father figures or that male role model a lot of times too were the people in that motorcycle community, the dirt bike community. Yeah,
and the education. I mean, the schools in Baltimore, in the city, are known for being very poor quality. And so there's a reason why these 14-year-olds who should be in school aren't. Right. Yeah. I don't know what the solution would be. I don't either. If you're listening, you're from Baltimore. I mean, I would love to hear from you. I just don't know what challenges you're going through, how you do it. But I'm sure there's other places around the country that are dealing with their own, like, really tough battles with certain populations and stuff. And I just hate to say that, Baltimore, it's just bad, but it's I'm giving Baltimore such a bad reputation. It's really a fantastic place. It's just, these are the interesting parts about it that I think can be studied and we can all learn from. Right. It's a beautiful place. There's great sports and the people are awesome and it's right on the water. Are you a Ravens fan? I am a Ravens fan. You're not the one who said you were a Steelers fan. No. It's Emily. Yeah, it's Emily. That's a different team. I'm not. That's okay. The Ravens haven't been that good recently. We can let that slide.
That's all right.
But it is beautiful. You have like these $1 million, but that's part of the problem. You have these $1 million homes that are right on the water, and then you have a two blocks down, you're in the blue light district.
And the blue light, I would think, would be like the red light district, or I don't know. Is that the same thing, or
no? Oh, I that's so funny that's just like a Baltimore term. I can't believe that's just a Baltimore term.
I'm coming from the outside. I don't know.
In Baltimore, the blue light district is a street that is predominantly crime-ridden, I guess.
Okay.
And so there are cameras on the lights, and they have a blue light on top so the police can watch.
Wow.
So if you get to an area in Baltimore where there's blue flashing lights,
you know the cops are looking at you.
Well, you're in the blue light district, and you know that you're probably in an area you should get out of.
Another fun fact of Baltimore. Yeah,
I'd have a lot of residents come and do their residency, and we'd be chatting, and they'd say, "Oh, I'm going to go check out Baltimore and do some exploring." And I'm like, "Don't
stay away from the blue light."
Well, what I would tell them is take somebody who's from Baltimore, because you can go 2 blocks the wrong way and you're in a bad area, and then 2 blocks the other way and you're in a beautiful area, or you're in the bars. And so it's just so intertwined and intermingled. It's interesting.
So working with all these gang members, or I don't know, just the type of patients that were coming through the trauma center or the hospital, how is security there? I would imagine being a lot different than, say, like a rural hospital.
Yeah, I think that the hospital started having more issues with security. And so by the time I left, they employed this team. And the best way I can describe it, or I would describe it, where they were like ninjas. There was a bunch of guys.
Ninjas?
Yeah, they were. Well, that's what I called them. And they had like these black, God, I wish I knew the terminology, but it was kind of like a karate.
Like a gi?
Yeah.
Like
and it was like tied. I think so. And it was like, they looked like they were wearing like almost like karate clothing, but it was more proper.
Ninja security officers in your ER? Is that what it was?
In the whole hospital, or like in the trauma hospital. And they had dogs, and the dogs were apparently trained in special de-escalation techniques.
The dogs were?
Yeah.
Well, what'd they do?
I have no idea. I've always wanted to see them in action. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see them. But they would stand. I don't know if their presence was just supposed to be deterring.
Yeah.
But the dogs were always very serious and very well trained. And so they would stand at the entrance, like at the time that it was shift change, the guys with the dogs, and then they would walk around and round on the units and just round on the hospital. They looked really intense.
I've never, I don't know what to say to that. Like,
I've always wanted to see them in action. I'm kind of bummed I didn't.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of want to, but do you really want to? You
exactly.
know what I mean? Because you don't know what's going to be.
You want to until something happens and you're like, I take it back. I take it back.
I'd rather be like the other side, like the other person hearing the story from someone else.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, but I can't imagine like there being security and dogs and ninjas walking in the hallway.
Yeah, it was really surreal. So, because I was thinking of how are they going to step up security to deal with some of these things that were going on in the outside world and in the hospital world.
Right.
I mean, you have your patients and their visitors. And when you have I think that they've had a history of one gang trying to finish somebody off, like coming back, they were unsuccessful. And so they would come back and try to finish someone off in the hospital. So how do you step up security? And they came up with this team of ninjas with these dogs.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I don't know what I just read the email and I've seen them. But I never actually saw them in action.
In action, right. You probably don't want to. I mean, you know, you don't want to. Now, did you have the whole thing where, I know this happened in St. Petersburg and other places, like in Florida, where gang members, they would just drop off people that were shot, like at the door. They wouldn't even come in or anything. They would just drop off a body.
The ED was kind of separate. Okay. So I don't know. I didn't hear any stories of that happening. Yeah. Because normally for the trauma center, you came in, like I said, via helicopter, ambulance, or you were transferred. You could be transferred from the ED. Right. But I just don't know if I didn't have a frontline experience with that. So you didn't see that.
You weren't exposed to that. Yeah. Because I've had friends that tell me that. I mean,
I'm sure.
Yeah, someone gets shot and they don't want to be involved
with
cops, or they don't want to get involved in anything. So they just pretty much, all right, dude, see ya. Good luck.
Well, kudos to them to actually follow through. Didn't mean to hurt you.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully it didn't hurt too bad. Well, Olga, I appreciate you coming out to the show today. Thank you so much for being guest here at NSR, National Scrubs Radio. Any last words before we...
Thank you for having me, Derek. Thanks for letting me share my story. I hope I didn't give Baltimore too much of a bad rap. It really is a pretty awesome place.
I don't think so. I think you just were being real.
I ruined it for everyone. No, it's pretty. It's a really pretty place.
Well, I appreciate you being real. Thank you so much for coming out today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to NSR, National Scrubs Radio, with your host, Derek J. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit Facebook and Twitter at Nat Scrubs Radio. We'll catch you next time.